Hey, good afternoon to you, everyone. This is Uday here from Incubate Hub. We will just give maybe a minute or two for people to join in. Before we begin, we have a very interesting session today, um, and I'm sure it's going to be a lot interactive. So before we begin, I just thought I will just quickly set the cadence and also let you know. So people have an option to unmute themselves, right? So because we want it to be interactive. But my request is that whomsoever is not speaking, just ensure that you kindly mute yourself so that there is no interruption. And so great. I think Pruth, do let me know if when we need to begin. Then
Yes, we are live and we can begin.
okay, great. So good afternoon to you, everyone. This is Uday here from Incubate Hub, and welcome you all yet again for an exciting session today. As Incubate Hub, you know that Incubate Hub keeps showcasing a lot of promising emerging tech, companies who have a lot to show to the whole world and how they are impacting, with their promising solutions and products. So today, as you know, there is a huge amount of need for trust and transparency in digital marketing ecosystem. Correct. So with that, we have a very specific agenda today, right? I mean, I'm sure, I think, I was also a little surprised when I came to know of this, right? When I actually spoke to Arvind and his team, and then we have been working with them now. So, how do you save, say, 20 to 25% of your advertising dollars and maximize your returns on digital ads? And really, what goes behind this whole thing, right? And that's a very important topic. And for that, today we have, a very I would say, an experienced speaker in this area, Mr. Arvind Mathur, who is a product head, at Ad Fraud Suite at mFilterate. Now, I'll just quickly give an introduction, right? I mean, about what Arvind's profile is. Arvind is an experienced product leader at mFilterate, and he brings in about almost 14 years of rich experience in digital products and media. His forte lies in assisting brands to leverage technology and digital solutions to grow, scale, and sustain businesses. With this rich experience, right, at mFilterate, Arvind, helps brands with digital transformation by analyzing data and leads an amazing bunch of product managers, operation managers, and developers. So with this, I mean, without much ado, Arvind, kindly take over, and lead today's topic. Thank you.
Thanks, Uday. Thank you everyone for joining in. It's been an awesome ride here at Intrepid. We've been discovering new things and new trends in digital space every day. I think the topic is very interesting, trust and transparency. I think with the rise in digital over the years, and again in the last 2-3 years, especially during the pandemic, we've seen unprecedented growth in digital for brands across. Whether it's their marketing activities or whether it's their initiations as to how they interact with customers, or how do they engage with customers. I think digital is something that's really transformed a lot of consumer and user journeys in a long way, right? And just for benefit, I will probably share a quick deck as well for reference. And I'll try and keep it more interactive. Feel free to kind of ask questions along the way. Interestingly, this is a brand across. Oh, sorry, something. I think there's some background noise, guys. I just request everybody to be on mute. Unless you have questions, please free to unmute and ask me or interrupt me. Otherwise, I'll cover the broad areas. And in case you have difficulty in using the microphone, you could also key in these questions into the chat. And the team will pick up these questions from the chat as well, and we'll answer those, right? So as I was saying about the trust and transparency, I think every brand, whether big, whether small, whether they start selling online, whether they're already established or selling online, there are new ways in which they're using digital now. And inherently, invariably, I think there's a element of risk and fraud that stays online. That's always there online when you engage or you spend money or when you transact, right? A lot of this money, especially, goes into advertising, and that's where the ad fraud ecosystem for fraud has really evolved, right? So typically, when any brand runs ads online, or you see ads online when you go throughout, whether it's on any website, whether you're browsing social, whether you're on YouTube, you keep seeing different kinds of ads. Now, a lot of these times you don't respond to those ads, but those ads got responded to by bots and softwares. Right? The web is actually a big arena. It has got all kinds of traffic. There are good bots as well as bad bots. Good bots are those bots which will come and declare themselves and tell you, hey, we are a bot. Like a Google search bot is a good bot. It will actually crawl your website, understand what your website offers, and then index your website for better listing, right? You would want such bots to come and visit your website, right? These are good bots, they're declared bots. But then there are also bad bots, which actually don't declare themselves. And their intent is to engage with your campaigns, engage with your communications, come in and respond to that. And when that happens, they also bleed your marketing budgets, right? In certain cases, you're running PPC campaigns. In certain cases, you're running programmatic campaigns. Whatever format of campaigns you may be running, you get impacted by bad bots. And in fact, they make 2/3 of the internet traffic today, right? The overall industry size is estimated to be about 47 billion in terms of media spends, out of which 68 billion is what the size of the global ad fraud industry is estimated to be, right? And this is growing at a considerable pace, about 40% year on year. Right? That's the CAGR it carries. Specific to India numbers, 7,000 crores is what we had as a number for 2021. And we clearly see about 20% fraud across different brands that we work across in this region versus other regions as well. And the fraud is only going up. If you would have read some global reports, you would have read that even brands like IPG, are now able to understand that what a lot of bots they're actually, how the brands are engaging with their audiences are getting a lot of bots to their platforms as well. And then that's where their trust with the large walled gardens as well is being shaken. So brands have been pulling out of YouTube campaigns. You all are aware about Elon Musk's discussion on Twitter, where he's clearly mentioning that a lot of users on Twitter are actually fake. And this actually is a serious threat for brands who invest almost 35% of their budgets onto the digital media spends, right? And probably some of you may ask is, why does this really fraud exist? Who's to benefit out of this? And why is it not being controlled, or why is it not regulated, right? So one clear, I think, identifier as to why this industry is growing is that ad fraud is a very easy form of fraud to commit, right? You could be a small publisher anywhere in the world, plugged into a Facebook audience network, or plugged into a Google display network, or it could be a small publisher or a network that you work with. You actually can respond to any kind of a campaign that you are part of, or any kind of an ad that loads onto your page and go undetected. You can stimulate that traffic through bots. You can stimulate that traffic by carrying forward different user personas. And because of that, you can fake multiple different responses that a brand seeks online, right? And if you kind of compare that to any kind of organized crime, for example, an extortion or an IP theft or a cyber warfare or an identity theft, all of these have strong regulations and restrictions as to the seriousness of the crime. But ad fraud actually sits in so vibrant, and it's so deep-rooted, and it's so widespread across unfortunately, it doesn't have any strong mitigation ecosystem or a law to fight against. And hence, this is where brands like Mfillet come in, where we come in and we validate brands and campaigns or budgets for brands, and then we also help them mitigate these frauds in real time, right? Now, probably some of the reason, I think one very obvious reason is that one is it really impacts your marketing dollars or marketing budgets that you spend online, right? So close to about 25% of your marketing spends get lost when you advertise online. But what else does hamper, right? That's not the only thing that impacts. When you advertise online or when you transact online, you actually have decision matrix that you also take forward. You also have data points basis which you choose which roadmaps or which products you need to grow. A very simple example is a large FMCG company running a survey campaign where they're trying to find out four broad drinks that they should launch in the market. So one is a cola, one is an orange, one is a peach drink, right? There's another one. Now, which one should they take to the market, right? They do a survey. Now, if they actually do a survey and they don't validate who's responding to their campaigns, is it genuine user or is it bots? What towards the end they will actually have is a very spoofed matrix, right? They will not know what people actually want. The survey might show the bots that the cola is the best drink, and it probably would be because the bots would have clicked on that survey form again and again, right? But in the real sense, the actual response might be for a peach drink. So it's very clear to it's very important to understand for brands as to which of their entire decision matrix are getting faked and how should they really interpret their data, right? And ultimately, every decision that's based on data, we all say data is the king, data shows you the way. If that matrix itself is flawed, a lot of other investments that you make then become unfruitful. And a very clear example I'll give you is that we were doing this for a BFSI customer where a substantial number of leads that they were calling were turning out to be not interested leads. And when we deployed Infiltrate and we found out more about what's the orientation of traffic coming in, what we observed was that a concentrated set of those leads was coming through specific devices. And what that meant was that a lot of those leads, even with OTPs, were getting bypassed and getting punched. So they were paying their affiliates on leads, but those leads were never converting because the users never filled in their leads. It was all punched in data. And we went on to identify which were the good leads and prioritize them within the call center. Their efficiencies in getting their lead to conversions improved by about 25%. Now that's substantial value because they saved costs on the manpower, they saved costs on closure times, they had better dispositions for the customers that they were reaching out to, right? So I think the overall loopholes impact a lot of other areas beyond just draining your media budget. And trust me, if you actually search online, you will find enough tools that are available that can actually impact sites, hack sites. They can actually manage your bounce rates. They can also fake how much average time a user is spending on your site. So if you give deep down hard KPIs also to an affiliate saying, okay, we are not paying him for a click, we are paying him maybe for a visit, or we'll pay him maybe for a user navigation journey on our page, even those metrics are getting faked, right? So conversion goals, download goals, I think it's time where digital transparency or upholding digital transparency has become critical. And it's more so become more of a, I would say, hygiene for a brand today than a luxury to actually monitor these areas, right? And in fact, I'll share a few more slides about this. What we also observed is that auditors have taken a keen interest in this space as well. So if you look at ENY, KPMG, and others, they're taking now this as a practice to most of the top 50 or 100 brands that they work with. And they're clearly trying to identify this as a media strategy as part of their overall portfolio, right? And I think what's important is to understand what areas can a brand actually be impacted upon. So one is definitely the media capabilities, which is there, wherein as to what kind of matrix they drive to their own destinations, whether it's impressions, whether it's clicks, whether it's an app install or it's an event or a sale. Even sale, in fact, down the funnel can get faked. And I'll talk about that shortly as well, right? There are walled gardens then, or then what's the publish ecosystem that you potentially can analyze for a brand is its presence on walled gardens, the traffic drives from different kind of programmatic campaigns, e-commerce, are they actually driving traffic to e-commerce sites or are they driving traffic from e-commerce sites? I think in both cases you could track traffic as well. Affiliate networks, direct publishers, or even any kind of a pay-per-click campaign that may be with a direct publisher. So in potentially any kind of a publisher ecosystem a brand works with, that could be actually also analyzed within the audit framework. And then what the framework also covers is the platforms on which the brand asset really resides. So it could be the brand's own website, it could be the app, it could be third-party APK stores which the brand has listed its app on, or it could be an e-commerce platform that the brand is diverting traffic to, right? And then there could be obviously custom KPIs that you track across all of these platforms. And interestingly, why I think this becomes important is, and I'll give you one strong use case, a large fashion category brand which actually has its own app in ethnic wear. A lot of their sales was coming from a very specific affiliate. In fact, that affiliate was driving more sales to the platform than the platform could organically drive to its own store. And on a deeper observation, what we found out was that the affiliate had actually replicated the entire app of the brand onto the app store. So the app store became a entry point. The app of the affiliate became an entry point into the brand. So any kind of an engagement, any kind of a interaction that actually happened on the website of the brand was actually routed through a third party. Right, and this is I think this is quite a challenge. It's quite a threat because globally we see privacy taking precedence. You actually will have first party cookies take precedence and third party cookies will phase out, and you cannot have your data being controlled by a third party. So I think this becomes important. What we also observed is that when we evaluated multiple campaigns across multiple geographies, and this specific slide becomes interesting because it gives you an indication as to what kind of leakages might be there within your own campaigns as a brand, right? You would observe that Google search with search partners, Google Display Network, DV360, Facebook Audience Network, Facebook.com, YouTube, all of these campaigns have actually fraud on them. Right, and in fact, programmatic happens to have one of the largest kinds of fraud, and these are just averages, which means we've seen campaigns that have been really worse, and probably even purely a Google search campaign happens to be one of the cleanest forms of campaigns, but even that would have to offer you about 9 to 10% savings, right? And so probably who's making money when they're actually, why is there fraud even on a Google search campaign? Because a search campaign purely without search partners, there's no third party to make money, it's only Google. So Google doesn't do it intentionally. What we understood and what we found out was that there are a lot of other players who would run their own bots onto even a Google search campaign. For taking some references, there are platforms like SEMrush, Ahref. These platforms give you insights on SEO and SEM. They will find out as to who's advertising and on a specific keyword. They will map that information. They will map this information for the entire industry, and then they will sell those reports as part of marketing intelligence. So I think all of these are reasons as to why fraud would exist, why bots would fake user journeys. and why they have become more sophisticated. So sophistication is purely because basic forms of fraud get captured. But when you really have to look at how sophisticated the bot is, you have to look at multiple different checks. That's where an ad fraud detection company like us comes in. And we precisely do that by integrating with brands across multiple different touch points. So whether it's an impression-based campaign or a click-based campaign, we would look at fraud from different personas. You could have ad visibility, pre and post impressions being evaluated for visibility. But in clicks, you can actually look at clicks that are actually genuinely given by customers versus software generated or device generated clicks. In visits or installs, again, you're looking at actual clicks versus bot or stimulated clicks. Leads and events, you can actually have genuine leads. You can have leads punched in as well. And in fact, when you come to down the funnel, which is basically leads or purchases, now somebody might ask, why would a purchase or a sale be fraudulent, right? So, and as I said earlier, I'll cover this again. So it's not that the sale is fraudulent or the purchase is fraudulent. It is just that the attribution of that particular sale is fraudulent, which means the customer may have come to you directly, but by the time he actually transacted with you, a different party or a third party is taking credit for its attribution. And because of that, you're paying that money to that third party. Just as a reference, we do ad traffic validation for Amazon globally, which means in whichever country an Amazon app gets downloaded, mFiltrate goes about validating if that install is being given by a genuine user or is it a bot install. Further, we go down to check if any event on that app is also genuine or has there any false attribution been done for that. And basis these metrics is when Amazon is able to settle their payments to their partners or to their affiliate networks who run their campaigns, right? So I'll just take a quick pause and check if there's any questions so far on chat. But if you think there are any questions, maybe I'll just take a quick pause before we move forward.
Arvind, you showed a lot of like ad frauds happening across the world, across the globe. So firstly, I wanted to know what is the source of that data, and secondly, large companies like Google, Facebook, or Meta, like I believe they would be having some of their own ad fraud detection applications, right? So how does are you similar to what they do, or are you different from what they do? Can you explain that a little?
Sure, Vivek. I think that's a great question. Vivek, two things. I think one question you asked was what was the source of that data? So we are integrated across different brands. Today we are about integrated across 100 plus brands. In fact, in certain brands like Amazon, we are integrated globally as well. Right? For certain brands, we are in the European market, certain brands we are integrated in the Middle East market as well. Hence, the benchmarks we show across is an average representation of what we observe. So, and this is purely for data collected through our own integrations, and it doesn't represent any market benchmark. Coming to how do we differ? If you advertise online and if you look at and if you advertise on Google and Meta, you would observe that you get about 2% credit back from these partners each month as part of invalid clicks into your own bills. And when we detect the same campaigns for brands that we already work with, we get significantly higher number of invalid traffic clicks that we observe. And the reason for that is that one, the depth of fraud checks that we do is much larger. And secondly, the checkpoints and the sophistication that we have on these different kinds of algorithms that are ML and AI based, these are also much larger. So I will give you a quick sense onto this one in specific. So if you look at my current slide, which you observe, this is typically what a standard pixel of ours does on the page. So this is a pixel, it's a small piece of JavaScript which we give to the customer. the customer typically deploys this onto the landing page that they have. And the moment any traffic hits the customer's website, we look for multiple device parameters. Now, all of these parameters are non-PI in nature, which means they don't look at any personally identifiable data of a user. They are GDPR compliant. At the same time, they are comprehensive enough to understand if the user who's coming or the device which is coming to engage is the same device or not. And just to talk about more on that, let's look at the signals we capture. So there is browser, cookie, default font, time zone, device OS, screen size, IP address, user agent. There could be the screen resolution, the available screen resolution, the hardware concurrency, the battery percentage, the battery capacity, so on and so forth. We collect close to about 50 plus signals. And with these signals captured, they are actually hashed together to create a unique device fingerprint or a signature, is what you see on the right. And when this device signature kind of repeats itself, it's a very clear indicator that it's the same device which is engaged with your campaigns. And it's probably spoofing other signals, but in a sense, it's the same device. Further, there are heuristic and behavioral checks that come into play. You would look at mouse movement patterns. You would look at what frame size did the website open in, and so on and so forth. And when I say heuristic, what I mean is that you can't get about 30% of impressions from a device that has got less than 0.5% market share, right? All of these together in an AI and ML format would break up the broad rules for the fraud detection. And when the walled gardens look for fraud, they look for very minimalistic or basic checks in this regard. And hence, what they're able to only cover is something which is like a general invalid traffic. Like if you look at a scenario where walled gardens are coming in to protect, it's generally done at a pre-bid stage of an ad that happens. And at that stage, you probably have only an IP address to work with to understand if it's fraudulent or not. But as the industries become more mature, the ad fraud industry in specific, bots have become more sophisticated. They're able to spoof multiple device signals. And hence, you need to have multiple checkpoints and a deeper SIVT kind of a approach to understand and detect these bots. And that's where Infiltrate kind of scores.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sure, Arvind, that's helpful. One question though, in my experience, I've always seen frauds happening either via an affiliate or certain specific publishers.
Right.
Having said that, when let's say I'm running a campaign for my brand, and I'm let's say working with this affiliate. And I tell them that, okay, the traffic that you bought, or let's say the app installs that you got me, are like 20% fraud. And here is my tool called Mfilter. And they are saying that 20-25% of your traffic is fraud, so I'm not going to pay you. So I'm sure it is going to get into some kind of an arbitration. And people will fight on three sides. I will fight from my side, Mfilter, it will fight from their side, and the publisher or the affiliate would fight from their side. Like how does this kind of an ecosystem, and I'm sure you would have had faced these problems in the past. So how does that work?
So Vic, I think this problem used to be there around, I think 3 years ago, more in a more aggressive way. I think it's more or less sorted for now. Reason being, when we send out these reports, most of these reports are actually pre-sent to the affiliates. So typically, when a brand is starting off with an ad fraud protection product like ours, they actually pre-inform the affiliates that they will be given deductions for any kind of a fraud that gets deducted. And within the RO and IOs itself, it's being mentioned that the payout should be basis the infiltrated reports that go through. And then it's our job to get onto a call and talk to these guys to show if there's fraud or not. And the best part here is that when we go on to these calls, we walk up to them with strong deterministic data and with all the logs and the backup files that we have to demonstrate this. Because the key difference here is that we're not estimating or we're not guesstimating. It's all of these are actually logged or logs backed. It's backed by data. And if you show an affiliate that you can't have a customer to transact within 3 seconds of landing on the page, that's when they really understand, okay, this you have checks in place to monitor it, and hence they won't push you for it. So there are then affiliates who are generally the ones who actually have the audiences and are able to deliver, and there'll always be affiliates who actually have more of trading that they would do between themselves to inflate their deliveries. And I think that's where the publisher ecosystem gets really mapped out or becomes more transparent to you as well.
Sure,
So,
I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah, perfect. So I think this broadly talks about the overall categories of frauds that we cover, and obviously this is good, ever growing, and the use cases are very vibrant. For example, I'll give you a quick example for another customer, which was looking at a lot of clicks from a single device, but when we identified that particular IP, it was their own internal store that they used to have. And then a decision was taken as to why would their own internal store employees would be clicking on their ad campaigns, because ultimately their ad campaigns were meant for end customers. So it was taken as a decision that why don't we whitelist this specific IP from their ad campaigns itself, so that their marketing dollars can be spent elsewhere. Right. So I think insights and learnings come through basis this. And you mentioned about affiliates, but what I want to show you is also instances of fraud on the walled gardens. Now, all of these examples that I'm talking of, these are scenarios where every row is a click that would have come into the customer's platform, and the customer was paying a walled garden for each of these clicks that were coming in. Right. So if you observe, for each of these clicks or visits, the website for the brand was opened in a 0x0 frame. Now, 0x0 is essentially the height and the width of the frame within which the session was invoked. And a 0x0 session essentially means that the website was not even visible. Right. But the brand ended up paying for these. Right. In fact, this approach is very common with affiliates also when you look at performance-based campaigns. And typically interestingly, in one market, which is the Middle East, so in UAE, within 2 days, we had more clicks coming in from a particular affiliate, even than the total population of United Arab Emirates. Right. So that was surprising. Right. And that's the extent to which you could scale and give traffic. Right. Another use case where the same cookie is repeating back every time on a click. Now, what this essentially means is that it's the same device. And one of my arguments is that when you look at even an argument that, okay, it could be a genuine user clicking again and again, right? Then why would you actually spend the same amount of money to target the same user to come to your website maybe 15 or 20 times in a day by spending your budget on each click? And if you observe normal customer behavior, probably when you open up a window, you open up Google, you key in any keyword, you click on that search button. If you land on the wrong page, you probably click on the cross button or the back button on the top of the browser. Now, clicking on the back button won't change your click ID because it essentially reloads back the same page, the previous page that was there. But in these instances, it's the click ID. That means the search listing itself has been refreshed multiple times. And somebody would purely do this to bleed brands on the budgets. Right. A very strong, in fact, check that we also do is for certain sensitive category brands, which are also small, wherein a lot of their competition deliberately runs bots to actually drain their budget. And once they're able to drain the budget, the cost of the keywords becomes cheaper because nobody's bidding on that anymore. And that's when the competition will start its campaigns. So at times it's publishers, at times it could be competition, at times there are analytical tools at play. I think that's where the threat for brands is all across on the campaigns, and important for them to understand and protect the budgets as to who's coming and then protect those budgets. Yeah. Another example for mouse movement behaviors. Interestingly, this was for a telco, and what we observed was that the mouse movement patterns for genuine users will be very scattered. Which means if I would ask any of you to go to a page and replicate your own mouse movement behavior, you won't be able to do it, right? But for a bot or a program which is configured to go to a landing page and engage in a certain way, it'll actually always have the same patterns, right? So these are a few examples of how we go about detecting ad fraud. And it doesn't just stop at ad fraud. Then there are use cases of brand safety as well, which means we've seen instances where fake coupons were being used to change attribution journeys, right? There are fake websites portraying Amazon, for example, claiming, taking the logo, having the same look and feel. They will actually make you feel that you've landed onto the right platform, but in a sense, these are third-party stores. Now, imagine if you punch in your credit card information also on these third-party stores, your credit card identity also gets stolen. And if there's any misuse, the end customer would believe that it's Amazon who's been responsible, right? So these kind of instances come up. We looked at these also very seriously. It's part of our infringement portfolio as well. And that's where the transparency and validation aspect really kicks in for digital for us, right? You've got instances of fake jobs. You've got instances of wrong placements of ads on wrong kind of content. You will have examples of fake call center numbers. In fact, a lot of banks have asked us to identify areas where fake call center numbers have been posted. So imagine a site where you have got a fake call center number for home loans, and that channel is now being used to actually capture leads for home loans and then transfer them to different banks, right? So I think this is the impact of brand safety and transparency and ad fraud is multifold. It would drain a brand on its budgets. It would risk its reputation. It could make the brand make bad investments by spoofing data. And when you have somebody like us protecting you on these areas, you actually are able to really understand what's happening with your digital money and the digital spends and the user journeys that are there on the platform. Okay. I'll just take a quick pause to check if there's any specific questions on chat. Yes, Sukesh has posted a question. What stops the bots fraud program developer to cover up the tracks that are currently being used as signals for catching the frauds? In that scenario, how will MFT adopt, measure, or catch the frauds? Great. So KSI, most of the checks that we deploy are actually deployed on the advertiser side. When we deploy checks on the advertiser side, the fraudster is not able to change or cover what's already been done. And a fraudster probably will have a finite set of devices or tools that it uses. And the moment we pick up those tools and the moment we pick up those breadcrumbs through the device signals, it's easy for us to identify who's the fraudster and which device is he using, right? So he probably cannot, he can change something at his end, but he cannot change something at the advertiser's end because he's entering an external domain. He's entering the advertiser's domain. And that's where we are able to track him. I hope I'm able to answer your question. If there's anything following up on that, please feel free to drop that in as well. Yeah. And as I said, it's been taken up as a practice, which means that while we started off about close to 7 years ago, where we started and dwelled into the digital audit space and digital validation space, what we've also done recently is that the big fours have been started partnering us to now look at looking at areas that we could work towards together, right? So digital taxonomy, for example, what kind of a auditing taxonomy should be used? How do you really track? A lot of brands, even if they don't spend much on digital, they are not actually using the right taxonomy to track digital traffic, which means their organic traffic can be mixed with their paid traffic, and their paid traffic gets mixed with their organic traffic. They don't know where they're advertising. They're not sure what channels they're using. And that's one area definitely where visibility needs to be built in, right? Second is the setting up of goals. So a lot of goals that get set up, they can be spoofed by bots and by devices. So what measures are being taken to set up goals in the right way? How do you validate? A lot of brands don't even create a unique event ID at their own end when a sale happens or a goal happens, right? So I think setting up those basics are something that more of an audit guideline as well as it's more of a hygiene, I would say, as well now for brands, right? Invoicing and reconciliation, I think that's critical, because at one end you may be buying the traffic, but the other end you're also being going to pay for that traffic when it comes to programmatic or direct buys with agencies, right? Now, are you being delivered what you were promised? If a certain percentage of the traffic was fraudulent, are you paying for that? I think those are again areas of audit that have become or come into limelight as well. And then obviously financial reconciliations. A very interesting use case. This was with one of our customers again in the Middle East, where it was a large food ordering quick service delivery outlet. And interestingly, they were paying their affiliates on every second day basis for whatever orders they were able to generate. Surprisingly, more than 60% of the orders that were generated online on the CRM were not even realized by their financial audit teams, which means that the collections never happened for those orders, but the orders were punched into the CRM. And basis that, their marketing teams made the payouts without having a financial reconciliation in place. So I think these kind of issues come into light, and they call for a larger governance, and there are normalities that need to be plugged in. Some of these require ad fraud detection partners like us to come in and help brands, but basic ones like having the right digital taxonomy in place, having a reconciliation model in place, or maybe generating IDs for every event that happens down the funnel. Those are areas where brands kind of can themselves step up and try and plug those gaps by themselves as well, right? So I think I've covered broadly areas that I wanted to speak about at large. For us, testing this data out, if you're curious to understand how much fraud might be on your own campaigns, the deployments are fairly simple. We give you a pixel that you can use. That pixel can be used to deploy on your page. Every time a user visits, we understand the quality of traffic coming in. Further, there's also an event pixel that can be used, which can be used to track every event down the funnel. So whether you have registrations, whether you have leads coming in, or in fact you have e-commerce sales happening, all of those can be tracked for genuine versus fraudulently driven transactions. We can track for both of these, and that gets the brand the full protection that we speak of. And I think, and in a broad sense, we all understand that slowly and steadily privacy will become important, and a lot of brands who are today not geared up for having first-party cookies may lose control, and hence it's important to have partners who can independently audit and validate that inventory that they're getting in from. The advantage that what Infiltrate brings on the table is that we are neither a publisher nor an ad tech or an advertising tech player in the digital ecosystem. We are more of a technology company that helps you validate ad fraud, and hence we become a neutral party into this entire game. And there's a much deeper level sense of data that we have when you work across brands, across their different KPIs. So what levels you should track, what kind of system you should set up. I think all of these are discussion points that we have with brands day in, day out. And it's not just about identifying the fraud, but I think the real magic comes when we eliminate the fraud as well. Now, typically what happens is for the walled gardens, which means for Google, Facebook, and similar campaigns, where you're paying money on a daily basis to Google and Facebook and settling your accounts on a rolling basis, we actually are able to detect these fraudulent sources and immediately blacklist those inside the ad manager. So if you use a Google ad manager, we will blacklist this inside Google. A Facebook ad manager will be used for blacklisting on Facebook. And what that ensures is that the fraudulent device, which was committing and contributing to fraud, actually immediately gets arrested and is not able to load the ad again. So by doing that, the opportunity or the potential to breathe down the budget, that gets arrested. And it's something that's very valuable for brands. It's had a multifold impact on them. Brands would have saved money on their cost of customer acquisitions. They have saved money on the conversion rates that have come through. And it's purely because we've just weeded out the bad traffic. And once genuine customers come in, there's also transactions that come through. Right? So I think these are a few key takeaways which you also look at regionalism and look at contextuality. Also, you bring, you start measuring different media players onto a common funnel matrix. You can't have somebody you're paying on an impression and validate that particular publisher with somebody you're paying on clicks. That common matrix of cost of customer acquisition, that needs to be validated. And but mitigation of this risk will actually happen at different levels. Right. So I think with that, I want to take a quick pause and almost close this discussion. But yes, here is where we are, where we want to talk about more of our traffic validation and brand hygiene as well. Right. Just taking you through a quick, crisp slide on what clients already work with us. So this gives you a quick view as to the different spread of clients we have. If you observe, we've got both BFSI and FMCG. These are probably the two pillar and poles of it, because BFSIs are also very performance heavy, whereas FMCG is very brand heavy. And since we're able to cover the entire ecosystem, brands at each of these pole ends find it easy to work with us as well. Yeah. So I'll take a quick pause. Any questions? I'll just take a quick chat. I'll just check the chat. If there are any questions on chat as well. Okay. I don't see any questions. Okay. So Uday, hi, over to you, Uday. If you had anything from the session that you want to take forward.
Hello. Hey, sorry, Arvind. I was logged in from two places, so I had muted. Really appreciate, Arvind. I mean, this has been really very insightful. I'm sure people who attended to really must have understood as to how this is going to become a hygiene factor, I would say, for everyone. And my two words over here would be that kindly do reach out, right? In terms of anyone who is interested, Arvind, in the chat, you could have given Prithvi's contact, or even Arvind, if you can share your contact, right? Yeah, thanks for that. I think it is very clear, from what Arvind has shared with us, that this is just like AI is going to be like, I would say, almost like a hygiene everywhere, right? I personally feel that this is another yet topic that absolutely, which will bring up a lot of, and it's not only about saving money. I personally feel it is almost about the kind of intangible, I would say, impact it can cause, right? By way of incorrect data being used for any analysis, as well as I mean, that is something which is very clear that, one has to now curtail all this, right? And it will become a kind of a mandatory thing, just like cybersecurity is becoming the discussion point in the board of directors meetings. I'm sure, I think this would become a very, very pertinent point going forward. And as we speak, I think really appreciate, Arvind, that you and your team have really got to the depth of this topic, and you are having that control to be of value. And so we really love to work with you and your team. And surely, please, audience, anyone who is interested, kindly reach out to us. And also, this would be available on demand for whatever reasons people could not join. So Arvind, we would be sharing with a lot of other people as well, and I'm sure we will get back in terms of what all interests come out of this. Yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate. I think thanks for this time, and look forward to talking to a lot of you guys and helping you understand this topic much better. Stay connected, and you already have my contacts, so feel free to drop in any notes. Thank you.
Thank you.